Artemis II is facing a moment no human crew has experienced in over half a century, a stretch of time so critical, so unforgiving, that for 4 full minutes, nobody on Earth will be able to help them. Not mission control, not engineers, not even the most advanced systems ever built. Because when Orion slams into Earth's atmosphere at over 40,000 kilometers per hour, something almost surreal happens. The air itself turns against them. At those hypersonic speeds, the atmosphere doesn't behave like air anymore. It becomes a wall, a barrier. The molecules in front of the spacecraft compress so violently that they heat up, break apart, and ionize into plasma. A superheated, electrically charged gas that wraps around the capsule like a cocoon of fire. That plasma sheath becomes so dense, it blocks every radio signal. Inside the capsule, the crew will watch the windows begin to glow. First dim, then brighter, until the outside world disappears behind a white-hot haze. They'll feel the G-forces build steadily, pressing them into their seats. They'll hear the violent tearing of the atmosphere as it rips past the hull. And then, silence. Back in Houston, every screen in mission control goes dark. No telemetry, no voice, no data. Just a clock, counting seconds. If everything works, the signal comes back. If it doesn't, the silence doesn't end. The crew of Artemis II launched from Kennedy Space Center on April 1st, 2026, aboard the most powerful rocket ever built by NASA. 4 astronauts, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, Jeremy Hansen. Each of them represents something historic. The first humans to leave Earth orbit since 1972. The first woman to travel beyond low Earth orbit. The first black astronaut on a lunar trajectory. The first Canadian to make the journey. Together they are pushing farther than any human beings have ever gone. Their trajectory carries them more than 46,000 kilometers away from Earth, and thousands of kilometers beyond the far side of the moon. Farther than Apollo, farther than history. But there's a cost to going that far. Every kilometer they gain on the way out must be paid back on the way home. Getting to the moon is a problem of propulsion. Getting back is a problem of survival. And strangely, the most dangerous part of this entire 10-day mission isn't the launch. It's not the massive burn that sends them toward the moon at escape velocity. It's not even the eerie silence as they pass behind the far side, cut off from Earth for nearly an hour. It's the final minutes, the last 10 minutes of the mission. And within those 10 minutes, there is a window of about 4 minutes that matters more than anything else. Because during that time, the exterior of the spacecraft will be exposed to temperatures exceeding 2,760 degrees Celsius, hotter than lava, hotter than most metals can withstand. During that time, the crew will lose all communication, and the heat shield either works or it doesn't. There is no abort, no backup system, no second attempt. If something fails in those 4 minutes, no one on Earth can intervene, and the crew won't have time to fix it. To understand how extreme this is, consider a typical re-entry from the International Space Station. Those spacecraft hit the atmosphere at around 28,000 kilometers per hour. That's already incredibly fast, and we've mastered it over decades. But Orion returns at over 40,000 kilometers per hour. That's Mach 32, 32 times the speed of sound, the fastest any human has ever traveled. At that speed, air doesn't flow around the spacecraft. It piles up in front of it, compresses, heats, and transforms into plasma. The temperature at the surface of the heat shield climbs past 2,700 degrees Celsius. For comparison, steel melts at around 1,370 degrees. titanium fails around 1,670. Without protection, the structure of the spacecraft would be gone in seconds. That protection has a name, Avcoat. It's not designed to resist heat. It's designed to be destroyed by it. Avcoat is an ablative heat shield, which means it sacrifices itself to protect what's underneath. As Orion slams into the atmosphere, the outer layer of the shield begins to char. That charring process absorbs enormous amounts of heat. Then slowly the material erodes away, flaking off, carrying that heat with it. Layer by layer, the shield burns away on purpose, keeping the inside cool enough for humans to survive. This exact concept brought Apollo astronauts home safely, mission after mission, between 1968 and 1972. It worked flawlessly. So when engineers designed Orion, they went back to what they knew. Same concept, same material, but not the same construction. Apollo's heat shield was built like a honeycomb. Over 300,000 tiny cells, each filled by hand. It was slow, painstaking, precise. For Orion, engineers changed the process. Instead of hundreds of thousands of cells, they used about 186 pre-made blocks of Avcoat, each one shaped to fit a specific position on the shield. Like pieces of a puzzle, it was faster, more efficient. But there was one problem. No one knew for sure if it would behave the same way under real conditions. There was only one way to find out. Fly it. In 2022, Artemis I did exactly that. An uncrewed Orion capsule traveled to the moon and back. By almost every measure, it was a success. Until the spacecraft came home. When engineers inspected the heat shield, they found something unexpected. Over 100 areas showed damage, not the smooth, controlled erosion they expected, but chunks of material that had cracked and broken away unpredictably. Jagged losses, irregular patterns. In some places, deeper layers were exposed. Layers never meant to face that kind of heat. The shield had worked, but it hadn't behaved. The investigation pointed to something very specific, a maneuver called skip reentry. Instead of diving straight into the atmosphere, Orion dipped in, slowed down, then lifted back out again, like a stone skipping across water. Then it came back down for a second pass. This technique allows for greater control and flexibility, but inside the heat shield, it created a problem. As Avcoat burns, it releases gases internally. Under constant heat, those gases escape through the material. But during the skip, when heating suddenly dropped, the outer char layer became denser, less porous. Those gases got trapped. Pressure built up inside the blocks, and when the spacecraft re-entered again, those pressurized pockets ruptured, blowing chunks of the heat shield off from the inside. Here's the part that surprised everyone. Despite all that damage, the interior stayed safe. Temperatures inside the cabin remained comfortable. The shield still blocked the heat, but it was tearing itself apart while doing it, and no one could predict exactly how it would fail next time. NASA faced a decision: replace the heat shield and delay the mission by years, or accept the risk and adapt. They chose to adapt. For Artemis II, the skip re-entry is gone. Instead, Orion will take a steeper, more direct path. No pause, no second pass, no chance for gases to build up inside the shield. It's faster, hotter, more intense, but more predictable. The trade-offs are real. Higher G-forces, greater stress on the structure, less flexibility in landing location. But in every simulation, the system held, even under worse conditions than Artemis I. Still, the estimated risk ranges widely, from about 1 in 50 to as high as 1 in 2. Even the optimistic end is significant. And yet the crew flies anyway, because spaceflight has always been about calculated risk. These astronauts understand exactly what they're facing. They've seen the data, the damage, the probabilities. And they still chose to go. Reentry has always been one of the most dangerous phases of spaceflight. During Apollo 13, after an explosion crippled the spacecraft, no one knew if the heat shield had been damaged. The expected communication blackout came, and didn't end. Minutes passed, longer than expected. Silence stretched on. Mission Control could do nothing but wait. When the signal finally returned, the entire room erupted, because until that moment, they didn't know if the crew had survived. And then, in 2003, Columbia. A piece of foam damaged the heat shield during launch. No one realized the severity in time. During re-entry, the spacecraft broke apart. 7 astronauts were lost. No warning, no recovery, just a signal. That never came back. This is why Artemis II matters, because re-entry is unforgiving, too shallow, and the spacecraft skips off the atmosphere into space. Too steep, and it burns up. The angle must be perfect. The shield must hold. Everything must work. All within minutes. Orion's heat shield is about 5 meters wide, the largest ever built for a crewed spacecraft. At its thinnest points, it's just a few centimeters thick. That's the barrier between 4 people, and temperatures capable of vaporizing metal instantly. If everything goes right, after peak heating, the spacecraft begins to slow. At around 7,600 meters, parachutes deploy in sequence. First small stabilizing chutes, then massive main canopies. Speed drops dramatically, from hundreds of kilometers per hour to a gentle descent. Finally splash down in the Pacific Ocean. Recovery teams waiting, a mission complete. But all of that depends on those 4 minutes. 4 minutes of silence, 4 minutes of uncertainty, 4 minutes where physics decides everything. And there's another risk, radiation. The mission takes place during the peak of the solar's cycle. The sun is more active, more volatile. A powerful solar event could expose the crew to dangerous levels of radiation. Orion has a small protected area, a makeshift shelter, but it's never been tested under real conditions with humans inside. Everything about this mission pushes boundaries: distance, speed, heat, risk. Around April 10th, Orion will begin its final descent. At about 122 kilometers above Earth, re-entry begins. The service module separates and burns up. Everything not essential is discarded. What remains is a single capsule, alone, falling. The spacecraft rotates. Heat shield forward. The guidance system takes over. Tiny adjustments shape the trajectory. Temperatures rise 2,000 degrees, then higher. Plasma forms, signals fade, and then nothing. For 4 minutes, the crew is completely on their own. No contact, no updates, no help, just trust. In the engineering, in the design, in the shield. Back in Houston, controllers stare at empty screens. They've trained for this, simulated it. But simulation isn't reality. They wait and watch the clock. Because when the signal comes back, everything changes. In that instant, there's only one question that matters. Did it hold? More than 50 years ago, humanity stopped going to the moon. Not because we couldn't, but because we chose not to. Now we're going back, carefully, step by step. Artemis II isn't a landing. It's something just as important. Proof that we can go and come back. Because if the signal returns, the moon becomes possible again. And everything beyond it. Mars, deep space, a future beyond Earth. But if it doesn't, everything stops. We'll know soon.